Hey guys, welcome back to another intern interview. Today we're going to be talking about all things emergency medicine and how to match into this relatively competitive specialty for IMGs. Today I am joined by one of my former classmates, Dr. Chris Riley. He is a St. George's University School of Medicine alum like myself, and he matched into emergency medicine at Brandon Regional Medical Center in Brandon, Florida. For those of you unfamiliar with the geography of Florida, it's just outside of Tampa. And so the way I like to start these interviews off is just to kind of get a sense of why you chose to go to Caribbean Medical School in the first place.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Again, as Dr. Masurdi said, I am Dr. Riley, or Chris, you can call me. So there's a lot of things that went into this choice. A lot of you are probably apprehensive if you're considering choosing a Caribbean medical school, and you should be because there's a lot of things to weigh out. But the reason why I went is because I had applied to US medical school twice, actually, got denied both times, and I didn't want to take another year to apply. And I had actually met with one of my family friends who is an emergency medicine doc, who is also a St. George's grad, and I talked to him about his path, and he answered all my questions, and I said, you know what, let's do it. So I did it. I didn't really know too much about Caribbean schools in general. I didn't really look into Ross or any of these other places, just SGU, because that's what I was familiar with from what I was told. But everyone can have similar end goals, like becoming a doctor, but not everyone's path is the same. And you guys should all remember that. You can't really plan everything out perfectly like you would think in high school. Be like, oh, I'm going to 4 years of high school, the 4 years of college, and 4 years of medical school. I encourage everybody to take gap years. That's huge. And anybody who says don't take a gap year, don't listen to them. If you feel like you can improve your application and improve your chances and improve your experiences, your clinical experiences, or just life experiences in general, and it'll add to your resume for medical school, do it. So just to give a little background on myself, from Hillsborough, New Jersey, central Jersey, and went to high school at Hillsborough High School, then went to Johns Hopkins where I played baseball in Baltimore for 4 years. That was great. And a big question that I get from people is like, you went to Hopkins. How did you end up going to a Caribbean medical school? And this was something that, with baseball and Hopkins, when I got there, I was like overwhelmed because of the kids that I was, going to class with and taking the same exams as. I was like, wow, I can't compete with these kids. They're like off the charts. I'm trying to practice, every day after class, or, we're going on away, games, that kind of stuff, always traveling. Kate knows exactly what I'm talking about as a former D1 athlete right there. I mean, Hopkins, we were D3. We're not anything fancy like the D1, but it's
But you're
still
also
practice all the time. But yes, but at the same time, it's every day. It's a commitment. It's a year-round commitment too. It's not just the spring. We have the fall, winter, summer leagues, and all that stuff. So it took a lot of time away from my studying, and I ended up getting a lower GPA in college. And I decided I had to take a gap year. So I actually did a master's program at Drexel in Philly. It was one of the programs where you took the same tests, quizzes, lectures as the first year Drexel medical students. And my GPA still wasn't good enough. It was 3.4 there, which I thought was pretty good for first year medical school classes. But the med schools, they're looking for those numbers. They have those filters in there, and it stinks because you wish you could present yourself to them and show them that you're actually a good candidate and you're more than your numbers, as I'm sure Kate would agree with. And got to a point where I was like, okay, let's apply again. And I applied again while I was doing my master's. I got a couple interviews and didn't get in anywhere. So I decided to take another gap year. And in that gap year, I applied to St. George's, got in. And in that gap year, I scribed in the emergency department in Trenton, New Jersey. And this was my first exposure to emergency medicine. Loved it. Loved the personalities. Loved how you can see so many different things in one setting. And I liked how they had lives outside the hospital, which was really nice. They get to do procedures, all sorts of awesome stuff. That was my first exposure. And I went into medical school being like, all right, let's go to St. George's, which, to be honest, when I got down there, I was terrified. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't even know where Grenada was when I originally applied.
Very
And
relatable.
yeah. I mean, you took the cabs, right, from the airport to get to campus?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was going to die in one of those cabs. It was crazy.
Also relatable.
Yes, very relatable. And I got to campus and slowly but surely met more and more people. And in those 2 gap years, I really turned my personality around. I kind of turned more into an extrovert, which is weird. A lot of people think that they can't, turn from introvert to extrovert or extrovert to introvert. But I did that, and I made a promise to myself to like introduce myself to as many people as possible, say hi to everybody. And I met a lot of people at St. George's. A lot of them are my best friends and probably will be for forever. So when you go to medical school, make sure you reach out. Don't just become a hermit and say, I'm not making friends. I'm just gonna be here for 2 years and that's it. I'll see you later.
Yeah, and
Because
kind of
that's a
going
long
off.
2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that I really appreciated about being at a Caribbean med school is like it's very easy to find it. The thing that's nice about it is you're surrounded by a lot of people who are extremely motivated to have the same end goal as you. And it's different when you're in
Mhm.
a US medical school because you the chance of you getting residency is already pretty good. But when you go to a Caribbean medical school or any international medical school, the risk is there that you might not match. And so
Yeah.
just everyone on the grind every day, just being surrounded and like, it's just very motivating to be in that type of environment. And I think that's one thing that I actually like, I think people are missing out on right now being in like in the virtual experience is just being surrounded by like that energy. But Chris is absolutely right. Especially nowadays, like networking has become so important, even in the virtual setting. If you can get involved on like med Twitter or even just make connections with your classmates or your professors like online, obviously in a digital setting sometimes it's harder, but it also makes the world a smaller place. So just some things to keep in mind. You never know who the people you meet actually are, usually until it's too late, and then you wind up
Hmm.
regretting that you didn't put your name out there. So definitely important. Yes, you're there to study, you're in medical school to study, that's the point of being there, but making connections is also a very big part of medicine.
Yeah, and like Kate said, I mean, it's not who you are, it's who you know, but also these people, some of them will be your best friends for forever. And they may be your co-residents, they may be co-attendings with you someday, and that's pretty cool. Actually, my program, we have a lot of SGU people, which is pretty awesome to see. And so basically, going back to St. George's, I mean, this was the place that accepted me. It gave me a shot to get my MD, and there's nothing promised at all. Like zero promised. Everything is on you. You have to invest in yourself because you are your own investment. That's it. That's literally the bottom line. So anybody, teetering on the edge, being like, well, I want to be a doctor, and I've thought about St. George's. If you're not 100% committed, don't apply to med school in the first place, first of all, because you're going to be miserable because you have to love it and you have to like what you do. You have to love the science because this is going to be your life. I mean, I'm 29 right now. I've been chasing this dream since I was, 17 years old, and now I'm finally here. And that's kind of crazy. And yeah, so that's my biggest piece of advice for anybody on the edge. Like, if you're going to do it, do it. And invest 100% in yourself. Have a chip on your shoulder. Understand it's going to be a lot of hard work, and no one's going to hold your hands. So I don't know if you agree with me on that.
No, that's 100% the truth. And I think that the people watching this, like they hear me say all the time, that Caribbean medical school, like it's not necessarily for people who, it's not a great option if you have a low MCAT score or a low GPA and also low motivation. It's only a good option if you need the chance because you have a low MPET or a low GPA and you have this large desire to become a physician and you are motivated and you want that more than anything. That's who Caribbean Medical School is for. It's not just for anyone, because if you are not motivated, you are not going to survive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, no doctor is going to be judged by their MCAT. And that's the truth. But at the same time, these are good screening ways for US med schools to, figure out their applicants. But at the same time, maybe it takes a little bit more than that to actually see who these people are. Because I don't know about you, but when I looked at our class was super strong. There were so many kids that I was like, oh my God, you should for sure be in a US med school. So understand that the kids you're going to school with, I'd say more than half of them are excellent students. They're going to motivate you, and you're going to motivate them if you have that desire.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point that you bring up too, is like the standards to get into US medical school are so high that like if you get rejected by them, like both of us did, it doesn't mean that you're a bad applicant.
Yeah.
It just means that there unfortunately are people who have stronger applications than you. But like there are so many people, you're right. Our class in particular was just very strong, like super competitive. And I met people all the time and I was just like, how are you not in a US? How are you not in a US medical school? Like, how did you not make it in? And it's truly mind blowing.
Exactly. I agree. I agree.
It sounds like you were interested in emergency medicine from before you went into medical school. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Did you do anything in particular in basic science years to enhance your application when it came time to applying for emergency medicine residency?
So my first 2 years, I 100% just focused on step one. I think that's the most important thing you can do. Get involved in an emergency medicine interest group. I know St. George's has one, the Emergency Medicine Club. It was good exposure. You'd have guest speakers come in, talk to us about emergency medicine. And it's a good thing to have in the back of your mind. But one of the best piece of advice I've gotten throughout my medical career was before I went to med school, one of the docs I scribed for told me, Chris, just because you were scribed in the emergency department doesn't mean emergency medicine's right for you. And they said, you need to keep an open mind when you go through this whole process, because you're going to fall in love with things. You're going to fall out of love with things. And, before you start your clinicals, just keep an open mind, make sure you take every rotation, with 100% certainty that I'm going to keep an open mind throughout this rotation. And that's what I did my clinical years. I actually really enjoyed every rotation I was on. And I made sure to get the high honors in all of them, because that's super important, right? But in years 1 and 2, focus on step one. That's it. Do your emergency medicine interest group. I know there were some gunner kids that would like join EMRA and all these like residency advocate programs and go to their conferences and stuff as first and second years. And I was just like, whoa, that's you guys are throwing your chips in very early, because you still need to do well on step one and step two before you're even going to have that thought in your head coming from an international medical school.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. That's something that advice I definitely agree with. It's something I say all the time as well, is the basic sciences are for focusing on step one. Ultimately, that is how you're going to be put on a even playing field with all of the other US med students, other international students, US IMGs and non-US IMGs. Like that's how you are going to be made even. Obviously this is changing to pass fail, but you need to pass it on your first attempt to be seen even. Otherwise, if you fail it, you're automatically, you're kind of down a level, unfortunately. So just because it's changing to pass fail does not mean that you shouldn't do your absolute best and work your absolute tail off, because a lot of the stuff reappears on step 2 CK, which is going to affect your application. And that is going to it's going to become the new filter essentially in place of step 1. So you really need to have a good basic science foundation if you want to excel in clinical sciences. You can't excel in clinical sciences without a good foundation in basic sciences. So I think that's really great advice, because people are always worried about what they can be doing in addition to school.
Extra.
Really, learning medicine is the answer. So
Yep.
I'm very happy that you agree with that, because sometimes I think people are like, there has to be something else.
No, that's it. Just study your butt off every day, because once you fall behind a little bit in lectures, you're just going to stay behind.
That's
It's
so true. It's
med
so
school. It's like everybody, like I've heard it many times explained as, you know, trying to drink from a fire hose being shot at you. That's how much information is coming at you at once. And if you fall behind, you're going to have to work your butt off to get back to, you know, that place that you're supposed to be before exams.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the reason people keep using this analogy is because they're like, oh, wait, I don't really get it. And then like you go through basic sciences,
Yeah.
and it's like, wait, wow, this is exactly what it's like.
You know what? They need to like rename it. It should not be called basic sciences, because these are
I agree.
anything but basic. I hate that. I hate that so much. They're like, yeah, you're
sciences.
Yes, like I don't even like medical sciences or something. I don't know. Advanced sciences.
Yeah, there's nothing basic about the first few years.
Nothing at all.
And then, so when you talked about clinical years, you said you did know that you were interested in emergency medicine, but you were trying to keep an open mind to see if you could be shifted in any other direction, essentially.
Yeah.
Is there anything other than keeping a very open mind that you think you did in basic sciences that helped contribute to the strength of your application when it came time to apply for EM?
Basic sciences is in year 1 and 2.
Oh, sorry, clinical sciences.
Clinical. I think try to get as many EM related procedures as you can. Like, you know, if you're in, I don't even know there. I mean, literally every specialty that you do, or every rotation that you do, is going to have some relevance to emergency medicine. Like if there's a patient that needs to be seen in the emergency department, be that student to volunteer to go down there, introduce yourself to people, let them see your face. Me, I was lucky enough to stay at one hospital for my 3rd year rotations. And my last rotation of 3rd year was actually emergency medicine. So I had like the perfect setup. So every rotation I had, I was like keeping an open mind, general surgery. Let's see if Chris could be a general surgeon. Went through it. I was like, this was tough. It was really tough. That was my first rotation. And I was like, you know what? I could see myself doing procedures. Like I really like that. Then it was, I believe, internal medicine. And I was like, same thing. I really like complex disease and thinking a lot. So I could see myself in internal medicine too. And then it was OB, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And, you know, I just kept going through every specialty. And once I got to emergency medicine, I did like my first shift, and I was like, yes, this is it. So once that happened, I was like, I'm all in. I'm applying emergency medicine. So I got involved before the start of 3rd year with Emergency Medicine Residency Association, EMRA, which is the residence part of ACEP, which is the American College of Emergency Physicians. And I applied to their Leadership Academy program, where everybody from the country can apply to it. And I got accepted, which was really cool. And so I got involved in EMRA through that and their education committee. They have a bunch of committees that you can just reach out to these committee directors and be like, hey, do you guys have any projects you guys are working on this, you know, upcoming year? And they're always looking for help and volunteers. So as a med student, like you could write articles for EM Resident Magazine, you could write articles for ACEP's website, you could help edit ACEP and EMRA's podcast, which is really cool. So I did that for a little bit. That actually got me into doing podcasts because I've been doing really that for a little while. Yeah. So EMRA is an awesome advocate. And like we talked about earlier, it's like not who you are, it's who you know. Through EMRA and specifically the Leadership Academy, I met so many program directors. And I also met so many people or residents in certain programs that if I wasn't involved in EMRA, I probably would have gotten like 7 or 8 interviews less than what I got. So just on that alone, just showing you're outgoing, going to these conferences and stuff, walking up to people and being like, hey, My name's Chris. I'm a fourth year or third year medical student. I was wondering if you could, tell me a little bit about your program. Um, they like to see that because EM is a very outgoing and like personality specialty. You have to be comfortable talking to anybody. And so
That's the truth.
that's definitely true because there are some people that'll make you uncomfortable, but you just gotta fight through it. Um, but the EMRA was awesome. I know SAEM is another big one, I believe, for med students and residents that you can get involved in. But these are ways to get involved in things outside of your clinical years. But again, the most important thing is trying to do as well as you can during your rotation, get good reviews, help in any way you can, um, and kill your shelf exam. Uh, I I got literally high honors on everything, and then my first 2 years, I did really well. I got a 241 on step one, and then so I set myself up. I had a mental checklist in my head, and I was like, what are all the things I have to do to match into emergency medicine? And I went through everything, and it was like my obsession. Like I obsessed over getting involved in EMRA, doing the whole leadership academy thing. I even did like some cool volunteer stuff. Like I started a music volunteer program at the hospital I was rotating at.
Yeah, I was actually going to
Um,
ask if you could talk a little bit about that, just because I think, at least my experience on interviews, is that program directors really want you, they don't want to talk about medicine. They want to
no,
talk about like things you like to do. And I think in my experience on a lot of my interviews, I was asked a lot about how I volunteered with the New York City Marathon and how I fundraised with Team for Kids, which
mhm.
essentially supplies like, they raise money to supply like after school equipment for kids to like stay in shape and stay fit and things like that, and that ties it heavily into medicine. So I was able to tie like a passion in with medicine, and I feel like you did that really well as well when you were rotating in New Jersey. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So again, like Kate was saying, a lot of these people, they don't want to talk about medicine. They want to talk about things that you enjoy doing, and things that you can tie into medicine. Think about how many interviews they do in a day. They want to hear what makes you unique. You've already proved everything, right? You've proved everything. They gave you the interview. Like that's it. It's already done. They just want to figure out who you actually are as a person, and what your interests are, and can you guys be compatible. My third and part of my fourth year, I started a music volunteer program at Hackensack University Medical Center's Women and Children's Hospital, where I would just go in and play my guitar and sing in the lobby like a couple hours a week. And it was awesome because you could see it actually affected the patients, their families, and even the workers. They loved it. And I loved it too because I'm like, I get to do something I love to do. Um, and it's awesome to see the reactions from these people. So that was something big I talked about in a lot of my interviews. College baseball, if you guys have any like college things that you'd like to talk about that, you're really passionate about, that's, that's a great thing to talk about as well, because these people will remember you a lot more if you have something interesting to say rather than be like, oh, I'm involved in this. They want to see quality, not quantity with these extracurriculars.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like, even me as a person, like, obviously everyone's different, but like, if you show me 15 people and they all introduce themselves with their names, I might remember like two or three. If everyone
Mhm.
tells me a fun fact, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, the one who liked horseback riding. Like, I'm
Yep.
not going to
Yep.
be like, oh, that was like Jane. Like,
Yes.
no. But
Exactly. Yeah.
she liked horseback riding. So like, I remember that. And that's
You got it.
exactly what's going to happen on interviews also. Like, they're interviewing how many people in a day, usually 2 to 3 times a week for like 12 weeks. That's a lot of people. So
Yep.
just really look for a way that you can tie something that contributes to your wellness into like making the lives of others well also. Like for me, it was through running. For Chris, it was through music. Just look for something that makes your wellness like enriching, and let it enrich others' lives as well. And I think
Yes.
that that will be a big hit come interviews program directors love to talk about wellness, and program directors love to talk about things that make you you,
Yeah.
not medicine.
Yes, exactly. And honestly, like make it a fun fact. Like do something interesting. Don't be boring and be like, "Oh, I enjoy working out and playing golf." Like no. Like if you're really big into golf, be like, "I have seen every golf course on the East Coast," or I don't know, something interesting and memorable. Um, like I really enjoy I don't know, ventriloquism, like I don't know, something weird. Like they'll remember that, I think. Um, but yeah, find those distinguishing factors for yourself. Really examine your whole application before you go in, because everything that's on there is fair game. And if you put something on there that may not be something that you know too much about, I would proceed with caution. That could be a dangerous game.
Yeah, I agree. Like I know I 100% agree with the fact that even if you don't think something that you like is interesting, like don't break your brain over it. What you like is interesting. You have to just be specific so that they know you're actually very passionate about it.
Mhm.
I use the example from my interviews is like hiking. Like I put hiking on my application, but in parentheses, I also put like the names of the national parks I visited. So like
Cool.
people knew which, like how into hiking, like I actually, like how much I actually
Mhm.
enjoyed it. And on interviews, I had two different interviews where I did an interview with the program director. I interviewed with an APD for one, and then an attending for another, who were both avid hikers and visited like a bunch of national parks. So please don't make something up that you think
Yeah.
you're interested
Yeah.
in. Don't put gardening on your application if you know nothing about it, because sometimes they really pair you up with
Yeah.
someone who, because they think that you're going to have a good discussion with this person. They think you're going to connect. That's their goal, is to get you
Yep.
to connect with someone on their staff. And if you're making it up, like that's a really bad look.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I agree. In terms of like people that I interviewed with, a lot of the attending, like if you say you play guitar or you record music or something, a lot of the people that you interview with will be like, "Oh, me too. Like, what's your favorite kind of guitar?" And then you're just like, I don't know." Don't make anything up, because someone will eventually call you out on it. Like I speak fluent Spanish. Like if you say that, you may have someone who tries to interview you in Spanish.
And it's going to be
So
a long 20 to 30 minutes.
yeah, it's gonna be a little awkward. Not gonna lie.
It's also okay if you're like, say you're learning to play the guitar. It's okay
Yeah.
if you like put learning to play the guitar, as long as you put
Yes.
like, you're an amateur, because then like your conversation can be, maybe they'll teach you some things on interviews. Like people
Yeah.
don't realize how chill the actual interview actually is. Like you might
Hmm.
actually learn a tip or two for playing the guitar, if you're
Yep.
not that good at it yet, as long as you like, you let them know it's a new hobby
Yep.
that you're taking up, but you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know one thing that I get a lot of questions on, and I willingly don't know that much about, is the letters of recommendation for emergency medicine
Hmm.
are completely different than that of any other specialty. They're called
Hmm.
SLOs. To
Yeah.
be quite frankly honest, I don't even know what SLO stands for. So if you could talk about how to, like what they are, first of all, how to obtain one, and like any recommendations you have for making sure you get a good quality SLO letter.
Yeah. So the slow, so it's specific for EM, obviously. It's a standardized letter of evaluation. Um, and for IMG students, if you're doing a rotation, make sure very early on in the rotation you let your medical student director know that you need a slow, and try to get your slows in. You need one or two. Some kids would try to get three, and I'm like, that's kind of overkill. You don't really need to do that. You just need one or two, especially this year because everything was virtual. So some students couldn't even get one standardized slow. They would have to get a standardized letter of recommendation from a different specialty, or maybe an EM doc that they knew from when they were scribing. So it was a little bit weirder this year. But the official slow is from CORD, which is the uh, Council of Residency Directors, I think, something like that. But it's EM specific. And let me actually walk you through it. So you just have background information. Um, they ask the medical student director, did this candidate rotate in the ED? If so, what grade was given? So based on your rotation, Do you get honors, high pass, pass, low pass, or fail? Pretty important stuff, I would think. They talk about, is this your first, second, or third rotation in EM, to see how much you've grown or how much you've done in the past. And then they ask, in terms of that department's rotation, what percent of students get honors, what percent get high pass, pass, low pass, whatever. And then they have just a bunch of questions comparing you as the applicant to other EM applicants. So commitment to emergency medicine, work ethic, willingness to assume responsibility, ability to work with a team, because in emergency medicine, as all of medicine, it's all teamwork. I mean, you are communicating with everybody in the hospital. And you're basically the triage people, right? Somebody comes in, you resuscitate them, you stabilize them, and you send them on their way. That's what happens. And if they're good enough to go home, you send them home. If they're not, you keep them in the hospital, and you have to communicate with people like Kate, or random specialists in the hospital. Sometimes have your ability to communicate a caring nature to patients. How much guidance do you predict this applicant will need during residency? And then overall, what is your prediction of success for this applicant in emergency medicine? And then they have like a section of written comments, and that's basically it, right? So you work your entire rotation to get this standardized letter of evaluation. And it's actually been ranked as the most important factor for actually matching into EM. And I say this because, well, now that step one is going to be pass fail, it's not as big of a deal. But the top 10 factors program directors use in selecting applicants to interview and in ranking the applicants are, this is 97% of program directors said letter of recommendation in the specialty. Then the next was step one. Then the next was step two. I've talked to a lot of program directors in emergency medicine. They said even the past couple of years, they put more weight on step two because it's more clinically relevant. So that makes sense. But remember, as we talked about earlier, step one info, you're building on that. And there's a lot of step one questions in step two. And there's a lot of step one questions in step three. Exactly.
Which I was very disgruntled about, but
yes. Stupid. And then after that, it's your clerkship grades in the specialty. And they have filters that they use. All programs have filters, right? And for IMGs, the most frequently used filter was actually non-US IMGs, which was reported by greater than 70% of programs, which isn't all programs. I mean, there's still a chance, right? There's still a chance as a non-US IMG that you could match into EM, but you're going to have to knock these people's socks off. You have to do all these things that I'm talking about, and you have to show that this is what you really want to do. Also target the majority of your applications towards programs that have historically accepted IMGs.
Absolutely.
And you can search that on EMRA, EMRA match.com. You can search it by state, and you can see what percentage they actually take of these IMGs, which is what I did for looking into a lot of my programs. I didn't apply to any programs that have never accepted an IMG because it's a waste of money. Why would you do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing that you have to be very cognizant of, especially as an IMG, is if they don't traditionally take, like, sure, it's okay to, like, shoot your shot for a couple of programs where you're like, oh, well, I would like dream of matching here, but they don't really take anyone. Like, okay, fine, apply to like a few, but like it's super expensive. So really just like apply within your realm. Like the stats aren't lying to you.
Yeah, exactly. And if you know somebody at a program that hasn't matched an IMG yet, but like, I don't know, you've got a really good relationship with the program director or the chair of the emergency department, go for it. But I'm saying if you don't have this secret connection somewhere, don't do it. I applied to, I think, 72 programs. And I only applied to EM. I didn't apply for a backup because I was very confident. Step one, I got, the 241. Step two, I got a 259 or something. I forget. So I did well on those and I was ready to go. And I was like, it was my checkbox. I was confident in myself. I was told by one of the SGU people, one of our clinical advisors, they were like, you should apply to two just in case, because it's very competitive. And I was just like, no, worked too hard for this. I'm just going to do this. And I got like 17 interviews. And I actually only went to 12 because that's the magic number is what they say. And I know there's a lot of people that needed interviews. So I was like, I'm not going to waste my time or anybody else's time. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But going back to some screening filters, most, as I said before, is actually the most is previous residency training, which is really interesting. Then it's step one failure. So if you failed step one, you're already out. And that was greater than 50% of programs did that. The step one minimum score, like if you got the minimum score or close to it, that's about same, greater than 50%. Step two failure was next. And then even US citizen IMGs were a little bit less than 50% of emergency medicine programs had that filter on. So it's super competitive and it's super hard and it's just getting, more competitive every year. So just set yourself up for success, create this checklist in your mind. And if you're 100% committed to it and you put the work in and you've gone to all these things and introduced yourself to people and kept in contact with these people, email them, don't like bother them. But I mean, if you, met somebody at a conference and you got their card, email them the next day, be like, hey, it was really great meeting you. Like, I was wondering if you can give me some advice on getting ready for applying for the match. And you'd be surprised at how many of these people will respond because they want to help. They care about you. Obviously, there's going to be some that are not as IMG friendly, but again, go through EMRA Match and figure out which programs are actually traditionally IMG friendly. I know this program that I'm in Brandon Regional, super IMG friendly. Because a lot of these programs and program directors understand they're like, some of our best residents are IMG people because I feel like we kind of have a chip on our shoulder and nothing's really been handed to us. I'm an IMG and I got very competitive interviews at big academic programs. I didn't match there, but the more that I thought about it, I was like, all right, my number one, I ranked Duke, which is a great academic program. And then I thought about it after the match. I was like, I didn't match at Duke. I was so upset. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. They
But you
probably matched
interviewed
their
at Duke, which is
yeah,
impressive.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, what? They probably matched like their top 12 applicants. So, and I was in the interview with like some kid from Hopkins and like all this stuff. I'm like, I'm at the same table as these kids. This is so cool. So everything happens for a reason. You end up matching where you end up for a reason. I love Tampa. I live in Tampa right now. It's amazing. Tampa Bay Bucks are going to the Super Bowl.
And you're going to the Super Bowl.
Your boy won a ticket in a raffle from the hospital. Like, that's crazy. So everything happens for a reason, guys. Just keep your chin up and realize it gets better. I know there's a lot of you that are discouraged, as myself. I had imposter syndrome when I was at St. George's. I remember I had friends from high school being like, dude, how's your music career down in the Caribbean going? And I'm like, well, I'm in med school. They're like, oh, you're in med school down there? I'm like, yeah. So like, oh, awkward. Because I didn't really share it with anybody because I was kind of embarrassed by it. And now looking back, I'm like, who cares? Like, they're giving you the opportunity to get your MD. Just take it all in stride. Like, you're gonna have this imposter syndrome. I can't tell you that you're not going to have it,
and it's not going to go away. Fun facts.
fun fact, it'll be around. You just have to remind yourself that you've put the work in, you're qualified for this, and if you really want it enough, I mean, who better to treat these people than you, someone who's passionate about medicine. So
that's true. Also, just one more question about rotations. Did you do any auditions?
Sure. So technically every SLO that you get is an audition because it's standardized letter and you're being compared against everyone who's rotated there. So if you mess up once at a rotation, I may like refrain from asking for a SLO because that could really screw you up. Like, let's say you got into an altercation with one of the attendings or something, which I don't know why you would have, but let's just say worst case scenario that happened. I would not ask for a slow, because that slow would probably destroy your application. Because again, that's the most important thing. If you can get 1 to 2 good slows, you should be in good shape. But again, not every rotation you do, like, you don't need a slow for every rotation you do, especially if you're kind of on the fence with how you've been performing in a rotation. But again, realize that they do note whether this is your first or your third EM rotation. So they'll be more understanding.
Also, I lied. So I have 2 other questions because now you made me think of 2 more.
Sure.
So one, did you rotate at the program you matched at?
I did not. No. So I rotated at a couple New Jersey programs and a New York City program. And I mean, I got great slows from them. I ranked this program, Brandon, as pretty high because it was a newer program. It's actually in its 3rd year now. We actually have our first class graduating this year. We had, I think, 6 seniors match into fellowship, which is awesome. Big thing that I liked was obviously Tampa's right here, and I've only heard great things about it. In terms of a new program, there's a lot of flexibility there. If something is not working, there's really not a culture established yet. So it's pretty malleable. Like, I've come in and our intern class alone has gotten a lot of things changed in our program. And I love the trajectory of where we're going. So it's pretty cool that you can come into a new program and actually, have an impact, which is nice.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's one thing that people really undervalue about newer programs is that the new programs are really the ones who have program directors and chief residents with very open minds. They're really open to anything. They're not, stuck in this, oh, this is how we've been doing it for the last 50 years.
Since the
so we're not gonna
dinosaurs,
bother
yeah.
changing it now. Like, that is such a big pro about having a new program, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
the reason I asked if you rotated where you match is because a lot of med students have this preconceived notion that you have to rotate at a place where you're going to match, and that is not true. Obviously, I think most people match somewhere where they've never rotated before. I think that's much more common than the alternative.
Yeah.
And then the other question I had for you, just kind of going off the slows as well, because I don't really understand them. So I'm assuming that the people who are watching this probably are a little confused also. So I'm understanding now what a slow is. You can get between 1 and 3, usually 1 to 2 is sufficient. In order to apply to EM, do you still need other regular letters of recommendation from other specialties?
So they recommend that you have all your letter slots filled, right? In ERAS, right? So this is still going through ERAS. They take up your letter spots or whatever. So what I did is I was technically supposed to have 3 slows, but a hospital in New York City never sent my 3rd slow. So I submitted 2 slows and then a regular letter of recommendation from an attending that I had a really great relationship with. And he told me, he's like, I wrote you an awesome letter of recommendation, just based on a relationship. I love the guy. And I still talk to him.
Sorry, this was a letter of recommendation still from an emergency medicine doctor, just not a slow.
No, this was an OBGYN
Gotcha.
doc, actually. So you can do other specialties, that's fine. But if you do that, make sure they talk about traits that you show that are important to emergency medicine, or maybe mention a case that you had that had an emergency medicine aspect. Like this one, he talked about how I went down with the OB team when there was somebody in labor coming into the emergency department. And, he talked about that experience, which was a good experience for me. Because that happens actually pretty frequently. But yeah, so, you can get one from outside the specialty. I know this year they had all these different other types of standardized letters. They had the standardized letter of evaluation, which is the normal one. Then they had the standardized letter of recommendation, which is based on other, specialties that you rotated in, that they can do a standardized letter evaluation of you. But when I applied, I just did the OB outside EM specialty. But you can also do an EM person that you've worked with as a scribe or whatever, but that's not going to be as slow. That's just going to be a regular letter of recommendation. So if you guys could do that, do that. That might be one thing I do regret in terms of slows, is obviously waiting on that third slow. But I knew a lot of docs that I worked with and I scribed that knew a lot of people. One of the programs that I interviewed was Rutgers, and one of the guys that I scribed with, like, he was like, I think he was like best friends with the chair at Rutgers or something. And I never asked him for a letter. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, what did I do? That was stupid. But at the same time, everything happens for a reason.
And if you did match in New Jersey, you would not be watching the Giants or the Jets in the Super Bowl, but you're going to watch the Bucks in the Super Bowl.
That's right. That's right. And I also wouldn't be enjoying, a 75-degree sunny day today. It was pretty wonderful. Not going to lie.
Fair.
And it is January 27th. Very strange. Very strange.
It is very strange. It's like 40 degrees here, which actually isn't so
That's
bad.
That's not too bad.
27.
That's not too bad.
Let's see what other questions that I have for you. Research. Everybody loves to ask about research. Please talk about whether or not this is important for emergency medicine.
Okay, so the amount of research experience is not generally very influential in determining your competitiveness as a candidate, but that's going to vary from program to program. If you're going to go for like a prominent research academic hospital, sure. Like, you're applying to Johns Hopkins. Yeah, go ahead, do a ton of research. If they place an emphasis on research, do that. 4-year residency programs also place a greater emphasis on this, and publications compared to a 3-year program, because some of these programs will actually incorporate a research like sub-focus in your 4th year. Emergency medicine's a 3-year or a 4-year program. Personally, I don't know why you would do a 4-year over a 3 unless you're into research or you were promised a fellowship in that 4th year. Because if it's ACGME accredited for 3 years, why would you do 4 years? I don't know.
Never understood that either, but
doesn't really make sense.
Your specialty does some things different than most others, so I just let you guys roll with it.
Yeah, they're just like the cowboys of medicine. They just do whatever they want.
Yeah,
they don't really need to give an explanation for it too. They're like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
It's important to note that most candidates who successfully match into EM have at least one research experience, and an average of 2. Though not all of the research pertains to emergency medicine. Like myself, I had a case report, but it was published, and I got a PubMed ID for it, which was pretty cool. And I did like a research poster presentation at my hospital and all this stuff, and that was great. But at the same time, wasn't EM related. Well, I guess they presented to the emergency department, but it was more of a surgical case. But did it add to my knowledge of emergency medicine? No. Did it add anything to my application? Probably not. I mean, they see that. I didn't get asked about it once on any of my interviews. So, I mean, I don't know how.
The same situation was exactly the same for me.
I was going to ask, like, was it the same for you? Did you get asked by anybody?
I didn't get asked by a single person. There
you go.
I had one published case report in pediatrics from clinicals. And then I did cardio research actually as an undergrad at the med school. Not a peep out of any of the interviews.
Good.
Not one.
Glad you spent all those hours doing that, huh?
Yeah, lovely.
Yes. Yeah, that was actually pretty annoying because I did put a lot of time into that, as stupid as that sounds. I did put a lot of time into it, and I was like, what the hell? Like, you guys aren't going to ask me about it once. But again, it is what it is. I would not fret too much about research. It'll add to your application. It's just another checkpoint. But if you're really into research, do it, and they will see what area of research you're actually into. Like if you have like 5 publications in, I don't know, stroke research, they'll be like, oh, wow, you're really into, neurology and emergency medicine. Like, tell me about that. that's one thing. But if you did like a bunch of random research, they're not going to ask about it because they know you're not passionate about it. You're just
Yeah,
checking a box.
exactly. Exactly.
So overall, not too important when you're
Yeah.
applying
No, that's
to
what
EM.
that's the advice I usually give people too, is like, do research. If it is your thing, if you love writing papers or you love doing bench research, then by all means, like that's what you enjoy. Like don't let anybody stop you. Like please keep doing
Exactly.
it. But like when you talk about it, you'll be able to tell the difference. Like if you were to ask me about my research versus me about like running or like like they're two very different Caitlins are going to come out.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%.
So
But that's just with EM. Um, I'm sure it's similar with IM, like you're saying, but
yeah.
again, they'll ask you about it if they know you're passionate about it. Like my buddy who's a neurosurgeon, he's a neurosurgical resident, and he said that's huge for neurosurgery. Like you have to do research. So it depends what specialty you're in, but EM, no, not at all.
Good
So.
to know. Good to know.
Mhm.
And then also you mentioned fellowships. What kind of fellowships are available through EM and like how long are they roughly?
So there's a ton of fellowships actually. Um, and our fellowship match works differently because it's outside the regular match for fellowships.
Naturally.
Yes, naturally, just EM people being weird because that's just what we do. We're cowboys. Um, and you could have anything from like administrative medicine to like hyperbaric medicine to wilderness medicine. I know a lot of people are really into wilderness medicine, which is really cool. But I'm trying to count how many there are. There's so many. Um, Palliative care, peds. Obviously, you can do pediatric emergency medicine, EMS, medicine. I know that another big one that's been up and coming is tactical medicine, where you work with like SWAT teams and stuff, which I've actually thought about. I think that'd be really cool.
Wow. That would be
Um, that'd be awesome. They have sports medicine, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to do like, if you love orthopedics or something, let's say that, you could do a sports medicine fellowship and then, work with an orthopedics program later in your career, or you could still just be an EM doc, but have that focus in sports medicine. You can do ultrasound fellowship, so you can be the ultrasound guru in your academic program because EM docs love ultrasound. And it's so useful. There's like a billion things you can find out with the ultrasound. So, and then you can do critical care too, which is primarily a 2-year fellowship, but that's the regular match. As an EM doc, you can apply to critical care. So there's a lot of different options, but it's kind of our own match system. Simulation's another one too, because sim has gotten so advanced lately, where you come up with like your own scenarios. And yeah, a lot of these fellowship trained docs will end up at academic programs, and it's easier to get into those academic programs, get hired because you have that extra box that's checked again. So, and that's about it for fellowships.
Yeah, it's good to know. I had no idea there were so many available, let alone like, oh, wilderness medicine sounds pretty dope,
There's
actually.
wilderness, yeah, that's really cool. And you could do toxicology too if you want to work for like a poison control center. You can be one of the docs there. Um, EMS is really cool because you can do flight medicine. You can do
Yeah,
like
that's
be like
cool.
a flight surgeon or something, which would be dope. But um, but yeah, there's a lot of different options.
Okay. And then the last question I actually have for you is, I know you already mentioned EMRA and a few other resources, but do you have
Uh-huh.
any other resources off the top of your head that you think medical students would maybe find beneficial in terms of learning more about emergency medicine and the application process itself?
The application process itself, I would say, so obviously EMRA is huge. They have a student advising guide, which is like a little booklet, but they also have it for free online on their website. And it gives pretty much all the information that I've been telling you guys, but obviously longer. And it's a great resource. That was like my holy Bible when I applied. I also had an amazing fourth year, actually a couple fourth year mentors. Um, shout out MJ and, the amazing people at SGU, Vanessa, some just awesome mentors that I've met over the years, and attending mentors too. Find a mentor. That's huge. Find somebody who's gone through what you would like to go through, because they always have the pearls and the pitfalls of what's going on with that specialty. So that's a big piece of advice. I would go find a mentor and reach out. But the Emra Cord Student Advising Guide was like my holy Bible. I know I also talk about emergency medicine specific stuff on my podcast, which is Res Life. It's on Apple Podcasts if you guys want to check that out. We talk about a lot of random stuff on there, but I do have a lot of episodes on EM specific stuff. And it's pretty much all I can think of. I know SAEM, I believe, has some stuff, and Cord also has some stuff. So, yeah.
All right, I will definitely put those in the description below so people can click on them if they would like to learn more.
Sure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this today.
Yeah, of course.
EM is, like we said, a very weird specialty, and there's like a lot of things that I learned today that I didn't know prior. So this was helpful for me as well. And I know that people will find this helpful who plan to apply to emergency medicine in the future.
I'm glad. I think that was my goal, is to try to shed a little bit of light on some of the confusing cowboy tactics of emergency medicine applications. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.